And for more now, I'm joined by Trita Parsi. Trita is the former president of the National Iranian American Council and is now with the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Trita, it's good to have you back on the program. President Raisi, he enjoys the backing of the supreme leader, but not of the Iranian people. Are we talking about a president here with a legitimacy problem, and does that even matter?
He certainly does have a legitimacy problem, mindful of how these elections went about, but that is not necessarily something new to the Iranian state, nor is it, unfortunately, particularly uncommon in the current world that we're living in, where we have seen winds of authoritarianism blow in many different places and directions. But this will definitely be a problem for him because the Islamic Republic has long pointed to quite high participation rates in these elections as an indicator of the legitimacy of the system. And clearly this time around, that legitimacy was not bestowed upon them by the voters.
And Trita, we know the Iranian president does not set foreign policy, but we know that the president is influential in how it is carried out. I mean, that could include rebuilding trust with Washington, but how does a hardliner even begin to do that?
Well, I think a hardliner could do that if they so wanted to and felt the comfort level to do it. When listening carefully to what he was saying today, I did not detect any dramatically different red lines from what the Rouhani government had. The Rouhani government also did not meet either with Trump or with Obama, for that matter, or Biden, as we have it now. Nor did they say that they would be open to negotiations over missiles. So I think the red lines are pretty much the same, but a lot is, there's a lot more than just the red lines. There's a lot of diplomacy, a lot of motions that go beyond the red lines. And that's where I think we will see some challenges and difficulties. This will be a very hard veneer of the policy of the new Iranian president, and it will make it politically more challenging for the West, for the United States in particular. At the same time, I think we need to keep one thing in mind. U.S. interest has not changed as a result of this election. The United States and the Europeans, for that matter, have a core interest in preventing Iran from having a pathway to a nuclear weapon. That has not changed as a result of this election. And the best path, in fact, the only path for being able to ensure that, still goes through a revival of the JCPOA.
So are you saying that the options for the Biden administration are the same today as they were a week ago?
They're pretty much the same. They're just a little bit more costly and difficult and a little bit more uncomfortable. But it is not as if because of this election, the Biden administration is going to abandon the JCPOA. The JCPOA was there not because of any particular liking of the Iranian president prior to Raisi. It was because it's in the core interest of the United States to make sure that the Iranian state does not have a pathway to a nuclear weapon. That has not changed.
We know that President Raisi says that his priority is regional relationships. So I have to ask you, how does Israel factor into that?
I think what he's meaning with that is that instead of focusing on the West, Raisi's government is going to put their priority partly on regional states, and that means the other states in the region that form the axis of resistance that the Iranians have put together, as well as the Iranian version of a pivot to Asia. I think the Raisi government is going to look much more eastward than westward. As a result, the urgency or the desire to go much beyond the JCPOA with the West is simply not going to be there, at least not to the same extent that it was with the Rouhani government.
And are you seeing then Tehran strengthen its ties with Beijing, for example?
It has already gone in that direction. It's going to further go in that direction. And the hardliners in Iran believe that they now have wind in their sail because when the Iranians signed the agreement, the United States pulled out under Trump, and the Europeans, from the Iranian perspective, failed to live up to its obligations, and its companies were pulled out of Tehran. So the idea that you can rely on the West or the Europeans in order to be able to deliver that type of a prosperity for the Iranian nation, it's simply not existing on the side of the hardliners. They're much more interested in looking eastward.
I have to get your take on this before we let you go. We know about Raisi's involvement in a death commission that secretly executed thousands of political dissidents. And yet Raisi says he is a defender of human rights. How do you square that circle?
You don't. You simply cannot square that circle. There's just simply no way to do it. Simple answer.
Trita Parsi from the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. As always, Trita, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.